The amount of support I've had for my Street Track series has been incredible, far beyond what I could have imagined when starting off this foray. So thank you to everyone for watching, liking, and subscribing because of this series. It's enormously appreciated. However, one of the great things about doing this is seeing comments from all of you about Street Tracks I didn't even realise existed. It's always really cool from my perspective to take a look at these tracks because you come in with an open mind and you don't know what to expect. So when somebody commented about a street circuit in San Antonio, Texas, I thought, well, why not? Let's give it a bash. So here it is, the San Antonio Street Circuit, that hosted 6 IMSA races from 1987 to 1990. Now, before we get onto the track itself, personally speaking, this is the first time in years since I've watched back races with the GTP cars, and I completely forgot how amazing they were. Terrifying, no doubt about that, but awesome at the same time. I mean, just look at the amount of kickback that Bob Wallach is having to try and control going through a corner. Also, this was done in roasting air temperatures. The cockpit temperatures could have gone to as high as 150 degrees Fahrenheit, which is 65 degrees Celsius. I think the word toasty to describe that scenario is one of the understatements of the century. Anyway, moment of historical appreciation over, let's get on to the thing that I imagine most of you are here for me to talk about. The San Antonio track wasn't very long at all, a mere 1.6 miles of distance to let rampant GTP cars go and spread their thunderous fury. Not a bad thing though, by any means. Corner-wise, just 10 of them to get right, 3 to the left, and 7 to the right. However, the event didn't get off to the best of beginnings. Practice and qualifying sessions had to be delayed by 6 hours. The reason why? The crews were still putting up the fences around the circuit. Again, this is a new one for me. When the cars did end up on the circuit, the drivers were met with some interesting corners, with some equally interesting features. The first feature I'd like to mention is one that's not even part of a corner. Look how far those walls stick out of the track. I know they serve a purpose in trying to get recovery trucks onto the track, but goodness me, do they really have to be at that tight of an angle? In fact, I'd argue what the point is in trying to put the walls that go straight where they are. If these walls here stick out as much as they do, then what's the point in having that much space in the first place? Anyway, what about the corners themselves? Well, considering how many corners are on this track, the organisers did manage to come up with a circuit that had good variety. Some really lovely open sweepers to start the lap. I mean, you couldn't take them with a whole lot of speed considering what sort of cars they were, however they were definitely a physical workout when you got to them, and they were incessant as well, one long fast bend after another. We then had your typical 90-degree corners as well. That might as well tick an unofficial box in the Street Circuit Creating Handbook. We then also had some really tight chicanes, which are in the middle of... Whoa, hang on a second, can we just rewind that please? Okay, stop it there. Now, I've seen some chicanes in my time. This, though, is taking the biscuit. I mean, I understand why they've done it, because there is curbing beyond that wall which obviously would cause problems. However, couldn't they have just slightly extended the straight preceding turn 6 and turned the road where that recovery truck is into part of the circuit? I mean, I have to imagine that this wasn't a workable solution because we have to have this awful chicane which just looks so strange and bemusing. It also means that the cars have to travel single file through there, which in turn means the following corner doesn't become quite as good of a passing opportunity. A shame really, because that part of the track is quite open and is quite a tricky corner in itself to get right. A braking zone that isn't straight, meaning that the rear of the car could get loose, especially with these absolute monsters of a car. That corner though is also home to the pit lane entrance, which does look quite awkward to try and navigate. There's also another really tight and awkward chicane to navigate. Not as bad as the first one, but it definitely doesn't get my plaudits. The track though had other flaws. It was incredibly slippery during the first race in 1987. This was believed to be down to the concrete dust that was blowing onto the track surface from the park in the centre of the track. Also, it was incredibly bumpy, although personally speaking I don't mind that. As long as it doesn't cause every car to DNF by mechanical failure and that the drivers don't get hurt, then it helps give a track character and an extra challenge. The track didn't feature that much overtaking, which isn't a massive surprise given how narrow some of the sections were. Also bear in mind how wide these GTP cars were in the first place. Some other interesting features that this track had included the start of the race for the 1987 event, where the starter waved enthusiastically the green flag on the circuit no less. I know that this was much more commonplace back in those days, however seeing it from a 2023 perspective does make it look quite odd. Several bridges also ran over the circuit where people found some nice vantage points. People also watched the racing from hotel balconies as well as the Tower of the Americas, where apparently you could see the whole circuit from. I wonder if another Texas-based racetrack, the Circuit of the Americas, and its massively tall structure where you can see the whole track, have any inspiration from that landmark of the San Antonio street track. In 1989, the track was changed dramatically. It still had 10 turns though, and was using the same piece of asphalt. That was because the circuit was going in the opposite direction this time. It didn't seem to affect the racing too much. That being said though, attendance-wise, this was a big success. For 1987, the race drew an attendance over the 2-day weekend of 53,000. 1988, 60,000. And then by 1990, 70,000 people flocked over to San Antonio to see these GTP machines race. For a track of that size, those are brilliant figures. Plus of course, the fact that the event was getting higher figures attendance-wise as the years went on was an encouraging sign. However, 1990 proved to be the final year for this event, which seems puzzling given the increasing spectator numbers I just mentioned, whilst also seeing that the event was estimated to have drawn in around $50 million in revenues towards the city. But what this event wasn't drawing in was a profit for the event organisers or investors. Whilst a specific number isn't available, it's reported to have lost $1.5 to $3.5 million. Whilst the event was hoped to have been brought back for 1991, the sponsorship drawn from the event from previous years was reduced due to an economic slowdown, which ultimately led to the event getting a handbrake being pulled up. It's fair to say this track was by no means perfect, and was beset by issues throughout its lifespan. AJ Foyt said during its 1987 event, "I think next time they will know that they have to do things a little faster and work a little harder." However, this wasn't an abject failure. It had character, and it had its challenges, especially in cars that were tricky to drive, along with the heat being a big factor to contend with. That though is going to be it for this video. Thank you very much for watching. What are your thoughts on this track? Should it have carried on, or was its chances of success about as slim as the track's chicanes? Say your thoughts in the comment section down below, along with any other street tracks you'd like to see featured in this series. However, until the next video, enjoy the rest of your day.